Okay, so where I was actually stopped by the recorder. Um, so yeah, the retailer buys, let's say, Countdown can't sell, figures out that they can't sell more than 50 units of bread loaf a day, and so they want to buy only that amount. And obviously, the manufacturer is not going to sell them 50. They want to sell more than, let's say, 200 units a day, and we're talking a day. So if the loaf lasts for a month, if it's one of those, not the fresh ones, the ones that are sealed, then they might last for um, a month. Then Countdown might order every 2 weeks. If we say 50 units a day, so that's 350 a week. So they say, let's say they want 700, and of course this manufacturer, let's say they don't want to sell less than 100 and 150 per day. Obviously they're going to go through the wholesaler and sell them every fortnight, maybe 2,000 units, and that works for the manufacturer. That works good for the wholesaler, who can provide 700 for each retailer and still have some left in case of the retailer wanting some more. So that's just in a nutshell how it moves, how the product moves from the manufacturer through the wholesaler to the retailer, and then once it's at the retailer store, it is available for the customer or the consumer to come and buy it. So that's how the chain works. Now, in your booklet, you'll see that it says mark arrows on the diagram to indicate the direction of flow of the product. Why? Because as you will see later on, the arrows can change, because if a retailer is making their own product, so they have their own manufacturing plant. So let's say if it's Nike, they make their own product, and therefore they have they go through wholesalers, like they go through retailers, other retailers, but they also have their own retail shops. So we do have in New Zealand, we have like a Nike shop, and they get their products straight away from their manufacturing plant because they make it. So they don't have to go through this. So the arrow in this case goes from here to here, and we're skipping the wholesaler because they don't have that. Well, they can deal with wholesalers, but the retail store, if it's a Nike, then it just gets it from the manufacturer. There are other cases where in very small businesses, especially artisan made, which means it's a handmade. So if an artist make their own paintings, then they are their own makers of their product, and they sell it directly, either through, let's say, they go to the markets and display their work and sell it, or they go rent like a gallery area in a gallery, and then exhibit their artwork, and then they get it sold. Now they are the manufacturers and they are the retailers of themselves, and they're not going to go through a wholesaler because their products doesn't come in big quantities, and they're not going to sell units in bulk. They might sell, if they're lucky, they can sell like 10 pieces of their work in a month or two. So in that case, they retail their own product, and then you skip the wholesalers altogether. In some cases, there are no retailers. The wholesalers have their own warehouse that is open to consumers to come and get buy products at a wholesale price, which is a lower price than retailers. So the arrows can change, but the usual process of this supply chain goes like this. So now the variables, the process can change depending on some of these variables. The type of product, as I said, if it's like a painting, that is a type of product. That can change the steps of the supply chain. The size of the manufacturer. So if the manufacturer is small, let's say cheese factories, if they don't make a lot of bulk quantities, then they might not opt to go through wholesalers. Like let's talk about Puhoi, for example. Puhoi is a small factory that produces, nice dairy products, mostly like cheese, yogurt. They sell in bulk, but not in thousands and thousands of units, the way other bigger like Fonterra does, for example. So they opt to deal with the retailers straight away most of the time, rather than have a wholesaler in place, because they can actually, because of the size of their plant, of their produce, they can actually just provide retailers with their products, and they would deal with dairies, they would deal with supermarkets. I'm just trying to think. They might deal with cafes and restaurants as well if they have some sort of an agreement with them. And in that case, we are skipping the wholesaler. So that's another variable. A variable means it's a factor that can change. It's not constant. It doesn't stay. It's not a fixed factor. It's a factor that can change. So the type of product, the size of manufacturer, and then you've got the origin of the product. So where does it come from? If it's coming from overseas, if the origin is from overseas and there needs to be an importing situation here, most likely you would have a wholesaler importing, because again, they can import in bulk quantities, and then they sell it to the retailers. However, having said that, if the retailer store, if it's like someone's own business, and I had given this example in class, is this Italian shop in East Tamaki that imports all Italian products, food products, not other stuff, just food products. They wouldn't go necessarily through a wholesaler. They can import their own container if they find a supplier overseas who is happy to supply them with the certain quantities. Now, if they don't, then find a supplier who is happy to provide them with smaller quantities, then they have to go through this again. A wholesaler who might bring, let's say, food from Italy, from East Europe, and then distribute it in New Zealand to ethnic shops who might want to get all these the products from the different places in the world. So either or, they can go straight away from the supplier that makes it, or they can go through a wholesaler. So again, it depends on the origin of the product. That also determines the flow of the supply chain. So these are some of the variables. Going on. Now, the purpose of retailing. So why, by now you would have figured why we have retailing, because manufacturers can't focus on what they do best. What they do best is make the product. So they can't really get busy trying to distribute it themselves. So they just want to find a wholesaler or a retailer straight away who would take their products in bulk. Because the example that I gave also last week is that if I'm making if I'm making a cup, right? Or yeah, if I'm making a cup, I'm the manufacturer, I'd have to prepare a mold, so a special plate for the, in a machine, a special plate that sits in a machine that would have the shape of a cup, and then use the raw materials, porcelain, and pour it in that mold to make the cup. Now that mold could cost thousands of dollars. That can't be recovered if I sell small unit. Let's say this mold cost me about $100,000 because I might make a lot of money out of this cup. Let's say it cost me that much. And then there is labor, people who are running the machine, and then there's the machine itself that runs different plates, and then I've got raw materials, and I've got maintenance for my plant, and I pay power and water and all these other fixed expenses, and maybe the property as a factory owner, the property maybe is not mine, I'm leasing it, or I have built it, and that is also a cost. So when I come to make a product as a manufacturer, I have to calculate the cost of all of the ones I mentioned before, and the cost of research and development. So before you make a product, usually a manufacturer researches the product to make sure that it works for the consumer. So when, does the cup work for the consumer? Is the handle going to break, or is it done in a good proportion that the user can hold it and it won't break in their hand? Is it designed to cater for high temperature, or is it going to be for cold beverages? So what is it offering the customer? And I need, as a manufacturer, I need to make a lot of research in order to come up with a design that is suitable for the purpose of the cup. So if the cup is designed for hot beverages, then obviously I need to research and design a cup that can accommodate those needs. These are called research and development costs. And on top of the other costs that I mentioned earlier, let's say it turns out that if that's all of this just to make one cup, it might cost me 120,000 grams, right? $120,000. So if it's costing me $120,000, how many cups do I need to recover that cost? How many cups do I want to make? Because once I have the mold, that's a one cost that I have paid, and I can use it over and over again. But then I have to always pay for the other costs, like the raw materials, the porcelain, for example, and having to pour it and make it into the cup. So let's say if I wanted to sell it for $2, I would have to make 240,000 units. If I want to sell it for $2, then how many units will recover my cost? So let's say 60,000 units will recover my $120,000 cost. So that selling 60,000 units will recover the cost, but is it making me profit? No, it's not. It means, okay, if I want to make 30% profit, then I'd have to add a markup on that, on the $2. So it becomes, what's the 30% of $2? It's about 60 cents, something like that. So I'd have to sell it for $2.60. And I'd have to make 60,000 units. So with that, I have recovered my research and development cost. I have recovered every cost, and I'm able to sell it for this price and make profit, still make 30% profit on top of it. So the importance of retail is that the manufacturer is focusing on all of these things. They're not going to focus on trying to distribute it and get it in the hand of the consumer. So they opt for, they have to go through retailer to market for their product. Manufacturers are normally located near raw materials, not their markets. So if it's a dairy, then usually it is located next to a dairy farm. If it's a construction materials site or a manufacturer, then you'll see it next to the raw material. It can be difficult for manufacturers to make the small unit sizes that the consumer wants. So again, we've talked about that. They want to make big quantities, and therefore they need the retailers to distribute smaller quantities. People need to buy goods, so retailing is satisfying that demand. And they can't go to the plant. It's usually in the walk-ups somewhere out there in rural areas or industrial areas, whereas retailers are all, they're concentrated in populated area, either in the suburbs or in towns. They're not in places where there's only little people around. Retailing is profitable and employs people. So the purpose here, we're back to here, the purpose of retailing, not only does it help the manufacturers, it helps make the product available to the consumer, and with that, it employs people who work in retail and help to sell the product.